So as they're on the way to the big kahuna, they're taking small steps to make it towards the big goal. I get these opportunities to recognize that achievement. And if I continue to focus on recognizing that achievement, I drive my people to high motivation. And what I end up with in the end is a high performing team that doesn't miss their goals, that wants to be at work, that loves being with people who are high performing. So it all ties together.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Reagan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in. Reagan Robertson here. Welcome back to Everyday Practices. Today, we are honoring your commitment to achieving your goals by continuing our discussion with Deni Hall. In our last episode, Deni helped explain the psychology behind setting and achieving goals. On this episode, Deni's going to unpack one of the most important and I believe completely underutilized skills in leadership: how to use active listening to understand what your team really wants so you can motivate them on a much deeper level. It's one of those tricky leadership roadblocks because while active listening sounds really simple, it's not always easy. Let's dive in. And Deni, what are some ways that we can, so there's audio and there's smell. What are some additional ways that you've known to kind of anchor in? And then how do you translate that to a team setting? So as a leader, you've got kind of your goals set up. And then for Chad's case, how do you translate that over into the team focus so that they too can anchor in?
Well, I think you teach them these concepts. I think that's the most important part. I mean, what better gift could you give to someone than to teach them the concepts behind goal setting and why they work? That would be number one. I think number two is that, what gets rewarded gets repeated. So if I set up some sort of a reward, and you'd be shocked how little it has to be to get there, but some sort of a reward. It could be a team lunch. It could be, it could be as large as a team trip. I remember we were in the foundations class one time, and someone said in the foundations class, I take my team on these amazing trips to Mexico and to the Caribbean, and all I hear while I'm there is, I wish I wasn't here. And my comment to the doctor was, well, have you asked them what's important to them? Like, why would, if the Caribbean isn't important to them, you might meet the goal by chance, but what's important to them? And it might be different for every single person. But
yes,
if it's, I think the motivation, go ahead, Chad.
No, you're right. I was just agreeing that it would be different for everyone. And that can be frustrating, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge it.
I had a fun conversation with a doctor in Germany one day, and I asked him, how did you determine how you were, because he had gone to our foundations class, and he called us because he was so excited. He finished the foundations class and he applied what he had learned. And he came back to us and he said, I increased my business by threefold. And now I have a different problem that I need to talk to you about, because now he doesn't have enough staff to handle threefold the business. But I said, how did you motivate him? He said, I asked them. He said, that transportation in Germany is a big issue. And that the problem with it is that people don't own cars, and that traffic has gotten very bad and people have to walk to work or run to work. And he asked them, what would make your life simpler? And they said electric bikes, which had never entered his mind that an electric bike would motivate them. And so he set individual goals for everybody on the team. Those goals wrapped up into his overarching goal. And what he said was 100% of the people met their goal, and he bought each of them an electric bike. And he said, I've never had a happier staff than this staff, because I solved a problem for them. It wasn't my wishes or what I thought was important. It was what they determined was important. He said they park the bikes at the office if they're not going to use them. But other than that, they've got those bikes and they can ride them all over town, and it makes their life so much easier. So I think setting goals is one thing, but the motivation to achieve has to be there as well.
And if I hear you correctly, you're saying that motivation, going back to what you said earlier, was adding an emotion to those goals helps kind of put that foundation and that keeps them going and driving and moving forward towards that goal. So this really sort of transfers into active listening, which we want to do a special 2-part episode on for your time together, because you have to really be a great listener to understand what goals are important to your team. So you have to really understand that before going into the reward sequence, right?
Absolutely. I have to be able to ask the right questions that get the right get my people to be talking to me about the things that are important to them. I can remember once I was always bringing gift cards into my offices when I had several offices that I was supervising. And I would just, when I saw someone doing something right, doing the 1 minute manager thing, I'd see them doing something right and I'd hand them a gift card. And I didn't always get the results that I thought I was going to get from them. So one day I got all of my dental assistants together. I put them in one room and I said, okay, well, let's talk about this. What can I give you that would be meaningful to you? Not what's meaningful to me. And it was amazing. Overarching, it was about a 95% to 5% vote that what they really wanted was a grocery store gift card. And I kept giving them Kohl's, or I'd give them, a Costco gift. I gave them all kinds of gift cards, but it was never about groceries. And when I asked them why that was important to them, it brought me clear all the way back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that what they really needed to do was to be able to feed their families. And that was what was important to them. And from then on, I always had, a grocery store gift card that I would give out. And I think that's the part of active listening. I have to put my own agenda aside and I have to listen to what they want and what they need. And that's the most important piece. And if I will do that, I can motivate someone. And if I break motivation, I have a definition for motivation, and motivation equals intermittent recognition for achievement. And if I set the goal, that gives me the opportunity to give my people intermittent recognition for achievement. So as they're on the way to the big kahuna, they're taking small steps to make it towards the big goal. I get these opportunities to recognize that achievement. And if I continue to focus on recognizing that achievement, I drive my people to high motivation. And what I end up with in the end is a high performing team that doesn't miss their goals, that wants to be at work, that loves being with people who are high performing. So it all ties together. The active listening, the goal setting, being able to plan those goals out, and being able to tie it all back in together with a little bit of motivation.
Danny, it takes a lot, I think, to get people to trust any leader and just kind of admit, because like what really matters to them. I know that means being in relationship, as Bruce would say, always staying in relationship and knowing that person. Are there any tips that you can give? Because on the outset, it's, what do you want for appreciation? And the answer may be, oh, nothing, or, I don't know if I really want to share with you what's really important. How do you get them into conversation so that they can really reveal what truly does matter to them? What would be really appreciated?
Well, this is definitely where the active listening comes in, because you have to ask the right question. And you have to say to someone, it might be a question like, for instance, I've noticed when I bring in gift cards, you guys are appreciative and I love that, but I don't always see it in your eyes and I don't always see it in your heart that I'm doing the right thing. Can you tell me what the right thing is? And you let the silence do the heavy lifting. You just let it be silent for a minute. And then you allow that group to think about it for a moment. The first answer that comes out of their mouth is probably not going to be the true answer. And your job as an active listener is to listen to what they just said and then dive a little deeper, ask a follow-up question, continue to ask them, what's really important to you? Because my job here is to make you happy and satisfied with your job. And part of that job means motivation. And if I'm not doing the right thing, I hope you will come to me and tell me what's important to you. And I think you said it really clearly, Reagan, is that it's about the relationship I've built with my people. Do I understand my people at a level that is deeper than the surface? And am I judgmental when I do hear what they're saying? For me, a grocery store gift card wouldn't be that exciting. I'd probably rather have a massage. But to them, that's foreign concept. If I gave them a massage gift card, doesn't mean a bit to them. It won't motivate them to higher performance. But if I gave them a grocery store card, because that's where they're at, if I'm meeting them where they're at, the grocery store card will motivate them to higher performance. And so it all really starts with that active listening skill of how do I actually listen to my people?
You know what else is interesting about that is a grocery card is fungible. Now all of a sudden they can use that money for whatever they want, which actually might be more fun or important to them, but they have to buy groceries, but they'll buy the massage for themselves if they have enough money or something like that. Or they'll buy the massage and then put themselves in jeopardy of being able to buy the groceries, right? We all have wants and needs that are in battle. But you buy them the staple, and then all of a sudden that transfers into money that they'll certainly be able to use towards that. That now their have to money becomes elective money.
Oh my gosh, you said that so well. I can remember I had a DA once, and she had done something really extraordinary and really out of the realm of what was expected of her. And I handed her $100 grocery card, and her response to me was, "You have no idea how this impacted my family because we had no money for groceries this month." And when you talk about adding emotion to goal setting, here's where the rubber meets the road. Like the emotion, I bawled my eyes out. She was crying. And together, I was just like, the appreciation was like flowing out of me like crazy. But when it's right, you'll feel that connection with your people. And that's the most amazing feeling of all.
How would you recommend this in like this type of conversation? I'm put Chad on the chopping block because I just love to do that. I know for me, I know for me with my team in particular, like getting to know them and what's really important to them, like in their life, term goals. So we're not in a dental practice. In fact, we work remotely together with each other. So there's, a little bit of wiggle room, with their goals. They may be a little bit different than an in-office setting, but what would you recommend? What type of format, like even so Chad's gonna go in and talk to his team and have one of these conversations. Is it how do you scrape past that surface? You kind of touched on it a little bit, like you said, make sure you stay in the conversation with them and dig a little bit deeper. Is it just as simple as that? You're just saying, tell me more and then let the silence go? Or are there other tips in how he can practice it and kind of have a higher chance of success at getting to that deeper level of conversation?
I think it kind of goes back to a Kaizen principle about, continuous improvement. It's really about 5 whys, but I don't ask why questions because why questions put people on the defense. But I'm thinking that in the back of my mind that I probably have to go down 3 to 5 levels before I'm going to get the real answer. And so I have to hold myself in the position of being very uncomfortable of asking kind of these what might feel like drilling questions to someone else to really get to their why. Because they're not going to tell you the first time out because it's embarrassing for them or because they think you might judge them. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes on in the head that actually stops them from actually telling you. But the more you sit there for a minute and you listen to what they just said and you respond to what they just said and you hold yourself accountable for sticking in the conversation long enough, you will get to their why. Just like we talk about in everything that PDA talks about, the why is where it's at. And it was I have someone who reports to me that is really struggling with daycare right now. And I tell you, I woke up at night going, I have to figure out something that will help motivate him. This is something that's on his mind all day long, and it's a struggle. But I have to be paying attention every minute, Reagan. It can't be me just once in a while deciding I'm going to listen, because all of the clues come from a lot of different places. They don't come from my conversation necessarily with that person, but they come from other conversations. And so it's total attention to that about, do I really care about my people and do I want to motivate them to the highest performing team that I can? Or am I just going to, put a Band-Aid on it and move through it?
Chad, how does that compare to like your week in practice? How much time do you think you dedicate towards each, like connecting with each team member each week?
Oh, hardly a bit. I mean,
Yeah.
like when we talk about this, I get the idea of conceptually, and then the pragmatic
Mhm.
answer. Like sometimes I just go, man, there's just also a disconnect of through the week how many voices are competing for my attention, verbally or not.
Mhm.
Emails, texts, patients, employees, uh, the patient's family members, the stuff getting sent out, stuff coming in the lab, and
Mhm.
so, just saying, hey, why don't you take a special moment for an employee? It's just like, man, yeah, that'd be neat. But so the trouble is, you get done with the week and you go, how many, special moments did you have? And it's just like, 3. I
Yep.
and then they're like, what were those 3? Okay, 0. You know,
Well, I asked you, and I thank you for sharing, because that has been one areas where I will fail is when I don't allot that time, and it's because I think I'm serving the higher good of the company towards the goals that I've defined. So I think I'm going. The team is fine. The team is fine. They don't, why do they don't need me? That's what I think. They're fine. They don't need me. But if I fail to check in, if I fail to take a temperature, even to understand where their why may be coming from, um, we suffer jointly as a group. We suffer. And I think that has been a huge lesson for me in my own leadership journey. Is I know we talk a lot, Chad, about slowing down and backing up and going back to basics, but I think it's something that I don't think we do plan really out in the forecast. How many connections are we going to make with our team? And how many team members do you have, Chad?
right now we're 13.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you and I kind of have a similar balance of people that we will be engaging with and talking with throughout the year. So
I
Deni,
also think it's tough as a guy. I mean, you listen, half of the dentists right now, age probably about 50 and under, are female, and half of them are male.
Mhm.
And even though that historically was different, but a lot of schools, these days it's 50-50. And so I, I call me, gender bias on this, but I think guys might have a difficult time with this. I'm not going to say always, but like I'm one of that prototype that might find it tougher to connect with female employees, and acknowledging that difference. There is kind of a difference in how I can connect. Now you can overcome that, but I'm just saying inherently there is a communication barrier that comes both ways, from the employee to you and from you to them. And so I don't know what you'd call that, societally, socially, or whatever. That also becomes a challenge.
I think regardless of gender, I see that though, and I totally acknowledge that completely. I think either way, it can happen either way. That it can be a challenge. And I mean, I guess editorially speaking, I've also heard female dentists have that problem with communication, but by and large, I tend to hear the males they will say that they have the hardest time kind of connecting like that. And Deni, my question is for you. I'm going to take it. The strategy of it's like a bike, and you just have to get on, and you have to ride it, and you have to practice it and fall over a few times.
I like
So
that.
I've never asked this on a podcast before ever, but how would you coach us, Deni? Because I know that it works, and I know that you've coached myself. Like our leadership team on it. So I know that it really does work. And how would we work that in? So we've got 13 team members each. Do we schedule like once a week with everybody and try to get to that? Is it necessary? Is it a once a month? Like, what should we do?
I love that, because it circles all the way back to the beginning of the conversation where we were talking about planning and goal setting. So if I plan it in my schedule, or for me, I don't necessarily plan it, but I think about my people at the beginning of the day and I jot their names down at the top of my calendar. And as I have 5 or 10 minutes, I just call them up because we're very remote. So it's a
Mhm.
lot more difficult because I'm not in the office with them. But if I heard something on a big conference call or I heard something during a huddle that that I thought, you know what, I could connect with them on that, I jotted in my calendar. And I'm telling you, if you don't keep a calendar of these
Mhm.
kind of things, you miss the opportunities. But I just jotted in my calendar. I have trouble connecting with one person and on my team because she's busy, I'm busy, we just don't connect. And one of the things that she does is she exercises a lot. And so this week I said, you know what, could you be my exercise coach? Could you hold me accountable and get me into a disciplined routine about exercise? So we go, well, that doesn't have anything to do with work. But I can tell you our call today was highly connective. She was doing what she knows how to do and she was helping me, and I made the time for her. It was only 15 minutes, but I put it on my calendar. So, and her name was at the top at the week on Sunday afternoons. I sit down and I write the number of the people that I really want to connect with on a deep level, and it's not everybody on my team because can't that can't happen.
Mhm.
But I would say that uh, just picking two or three or four of your people and maybe 10% or 12% of your people each week to really connect with is critical. So, it's about planning. Is it important to you that your people are high performers? Are you struggling with turnover? If you're struggling with those things, then this has to be a high priority for you. You put it on your calendar and you go, I'm going to connect with these three people this week and I'm going to have a conversation with them and I'm really going to listen. I'm going to have eye contact with them. It's going to be important to me.
Mhm.
What I hear is Google Calendar saves the day. Google Calendar for the win. Put it into your calendar. And if I had to modify that for dentists,
Mhm.
because one thing that I'm thinking is, oh, when I have a free 5 minutes, that's not during your clinical day. So scheduling that into your clinical day is going to be setting yourself up for failure, in my opinion. If
Mhm.
other people can make that work, good for them. But I'm just saying, if when I hear how can I make this happen, it's not going to be me putting it in at 11 a.m. on any given day, weekday, because I'm not going to have an extra 5 minutes. So it needs to be when I'm done. And that reminds me, on my calendar each Thursday night, I have down, call and text patients, check in from this week. And it's a dedicated time to be like, oh, yeah, it actually makes me stumble across it and be like, oh, yeah, I need to write them. I can't believe it's Thursday night already. But to do the same, I used to, until I was busy, with a couple of new practices and stuff like that, have on my schedule where once a week rotating, I had a one-on-one lunch with each employee. And we did that until I was working 3 offices and that just wasn't going to work. So
That's right. I forgot about that, but I remembered that that was a big goal of yours, was to have the
yeah,
lunches with everyone, connect and
yeah,
spend
there
time with
was
them.
not a big agenda to it. Maybe 5 minutes worth of agenda and then that or two. It wasn't that big of an agenda on my part, but it was just to connect.
And relationship build. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the rest of it.
So can you put that back into your schedule again?
I think by April we'll be able to do that a lot better. Yep.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I'm not that far out. We're reconstructing our meeting schedule and everything like that, and I foresee us being able to make that work better. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that one. I'm going to join that. I think that's a great goal. Thanks, Deni.
Yay, Deni.
Absolutely. I do think it is, and I don't schedule it on my schedule, but it's at the top of the page on my calendar. And every day I look at it just like the goal. I see it every day and I go, where can I find an opportunity to do that? Like what's important to that person? How can I connect with them on a different level? So just seeing it on your calendar, it doesn't have to be in the calendar at a
Mhm.
specific time, just their notes, just their names jotted at the top of a paper or on a Post-it note on your desk or something where you see it frequently. Then your brain is out there surveying for opportunities to connect with them.
It's really fantastic. What good information for our listeners as we head into the second month of 2022. Thank you, Deni, for being our guest today. Chad, any other questions you have?
Yeah, I just have a closing story. You'll get a kick out of this, Deni. All right. So talking about active listening and how putting a message out can have more impact than you ever realized. Deni, are you ready?
I'm ready.
You probably aren't. So listen to this. This is crazy. So Tom Green show, late 90s, okay? It's an MTV show, and I'm trying to think if I was in high school or college at the time, but
right on the cusp, because we're the same age. You were on the cusp because I watched it too.
That's right. So he had his best buddy on the show, Glenn Humpnick, and they're both Canadians, and so he's shooting the show in New York City on Times Square, and he puts up Glenn's phone number, but he has the things like Vanna White flipped around backwards, and he says, every time you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to flip this, another number on your of your home, like your personal cell phone number, and I'm going to flip it over. And if you don't do what I tell you to do, or if you make me angry or something like that, Glenn, I'm going to flip the phone number over. Well, what he didn't realize was, they're shooting the show over Times Square. The phone number was flipped over upside down backwards, shooting out towards Times Square. So anyone in Times Square could look upside down. They saw the whole phone number before they had even flipped it. He was receiving thousands of messages. And so it's just a silly story, but I always got a kick out of that Tom Green on the next episode said, well, we didn't think that exactly through the best, because now thousands of people know Glenn's phone number. Hey, Glenn, how many phone calls did you get last night? And he starts swearing him out, and he's like, you jerk, I can't believe that's what happened. But nonetheless, it kind of loosely ties in as a funny closing story that, when you put out a message or a goal, how that can be, how it can quickly take off your intention even more than you ever anticipated. There was no way that Tom Green anticipated to do that to his buddy, that in 1 week, he'd not even have flipped over one number and it was going to show to the whole crowd. So silly story, but Tom Green show. And this kind of reminded me somehow, some weird way of that. So Reagan, did you ever watch that Tom Green show? Not that particular one.
Not that particular episode, but yes. Oh my gosh. I was a huge Tom Green fan. I thought he was just such a great dork. He was really funny.
Right. We should see if we can get Tom Green on our show.
Okay, let's do it.
Wouldn't that be a quagmire? Deni, thanks again for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share, or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.